they use chemicals and what type of chemicals they use. I'm not sure that Roundup is even allowed in organics, but I'd have to check. I don't know. I can say that Roundup does persist in the soil. It can go into the water supply, but I would be surprised if it were allowed in organic. I just don't know the answer.
Okay, let's go to Windsor on Connecticut. Hello, Bob, first-time caller.
Hi, yeah. I have two important points. One of them was our bee population is going down like crazy, and
yes.
I don't know if it's a virus or what, but the second one was cross-pollinating. I'm wondering if you planted an organic and genetically, 10 acres of each side by side, does the cross-pollination sterilize the seeds of the organic product?
Let's start with the bees. Yes, all around the world, bee populations have been collapsing. And so because they're collapsing in countries that don't plant GM crops, we can assume that GM crops are not the primary cause. But in the United States, the collapse is higher. And so it's possible that the genetically engineered crops are a contributing impact to the death of bees. We know that one study showed that bees' immune systems became more compromised, allowing for a viral infection compared to the controls that weren't pollinating genetically modified BT corn. Another study done in Germany showed just as genes transfer from the DNA from genetically engineered crops into the DNA of our gut bacteria and continue to function. I know it's a horrible thought. It happens also in bees where the genes from genetically modified crops end up transferring into the microorganisms inside the bacteria and of the gut. So that demonstrates that bees are at risk from GMOs. Now, as far as cross-pollination, we've talked about the health dangers for a long time, but actually the environmental problems may be worse, and that's because of this cross-pollination. Not that it causes sterility, because that sterile gene hasn't been introduced yet, but that because it propagates the genetically engineered traits into the environment, into the food supply, even into weeds that are related to the crops, and we have no technology to withdraw it. We can't recall genetically modified salmon from the ocean, or we can't recall the genetically modified contamination of GM corn into the natural corn varieties in Mexico that's already taken place. So we are in a situation where the impact of our introducing a GM crop now could outlast, as I said, the effects of global warming and nuclear waste and be with us in our gene pool, which is one reason why we have to act now. So it's one of the most dangerous health and environmental risks we face, and because of the tipping point thing, when we can link it to health and get people to stop eating it, it's one of the easiest problems to fix.
Irradiated food, what do you think?
It's not my area. I've heard a lot of experts speak on it in panels that I speak, but since it's not my expertise, I'd rather not comment right now.
All right, fair enough. Let's go to Dallas, Texas. Hello, Craig, east of the Rockies.
Yeah, this is Craig in Dallas. Very
Yes,
important
sir.
info. Question, comment, then I'll listen off the air. My question is, what can be done, possibly bills passed, laws made, to help the people or this company, which the name escapes me right now that you mentioned, so that they make their money, their profit, in an honest way, in whatever the way that could be, in a non-GMO way, and so it's a win-win situation. And then I'm curious to know, so I basically don't understand what the advantage is for non-GMO from their viewpoint. And then the comment is, I've been taking a supplement, a powder, or a pulverized food for quite a while that has non-GMO on the label, yet it has X amount of lecithin, and I'm wondering, is this possibly genetically modified, and it's maybe incorrectly labeled? So I'll listen off the air, and I thank you for your important input.
You're very welcome. Craig, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, the second question is, yes, there's a big trade in non-GM products. That's because consumers are demanding it. So it can have lecithin in it, I can have all sorts of products from soy and corn, but not be genetically engineered. Can you remind me of the first question?
Where he is. Well, we're running out of time too, Jeffrey, and I want you to get your websites in.
Okay, I got it. I remember. The point is, how do we get Monsanto to clean up its act? Well, if you look at the film, The World According to Monsanto, which is available at healthiereating.org, a brilliant film by award-winning filmmaker from France, it shows that when they weren't into GMOs, they were telling us that PCBs were safe, that DDT was safe, that Agent Orange was safe. They have a history of producing some of the most toxic elements on Earth, and they are officially in charge of determining if genetically engineered foods are safe in the United States because the FDA does not require any food safety testing on these products. And so I don't know how we can pass a bill to get their act together when they've had over 100 years of causing calamities right and left.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe time for one more quick call in Houston. John, go ahead. About a minute or so for you.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, George. Mr. Smith, pleasure to talk to you. 2 comments and a quick question. First comment was in Texas this year at the Democratic State Convention, language was introduced to the Democratic platform that was very anti-GMO. That was language which I authored and brought to the table. That language was able to make it into the National Convention. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that followed through with some of the issues that you had mentioned in the possible appointees that we're seeing. Second thing, I wanted to make a comment that Vandana Shiva, I'm sure you have mentioned her. Her book, Stolen Harvest, was one of the premier pioneers in this field. She, as a nuclear scientist, saw the dangers of GMO seed and the possibility that it did to the crops and the problems that it caused to the crops in India. Last, I want to ask a question. My question is, has any city tried to put a label on food that is sold in that city? In other words, if Houston, the City Council of Houston...
Okay, good point. 30 seconds, Jeffrey.
Okay, there's been cities and counties that have banned the planting of GM crops in the United States. There was a state that tried to pass a ballot initiative, but a disinformation campaign by the biotech industry told them that it would cost families over $500, which was not true, so the ballot initiative didn't pass.
Jeffrey, great information. I invite all of you to go up to his website, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. When we come right back, it's time for Dreams and Demons with Rosemary Ellen Guiley.